So good morning. I'm going to talk about this topic because I think everybody experiences trying to persuade people who they work with to do something different. I would think that because you've come to a conference, you're interested to learn more, and you're hoping to go back to your organisation with new things to try out. And then you face the difficult battle of persuading anyone to do anything differently. So this is what the topic of my talk is. And it's not, a lot of it's not really specifically agile, it's just generally how do you persuade people to try new things. So this is the environment that I work in at the moment. I work with XP teams, a very open workspace, quite a young team, and they're quite happy to try new things. But even there, where they're very, very XP, if you ask them to try something that's different than the core XP practices, like, oh, maybe we can try Kanban, then they're really not so sure. Or maybe let's change the iteration length, then they're, again, not sure. Perhaps we don't have a retrospective this time, then they still question whether it's worth it. So it's not easy with any group, even people who like change and are very agile. So I wanted to ask a little bit about you. So has any of you tried changes at work? And how did it go? Was it easy? No. No. Is it a piece of cake? No, it's not a piece of cake. What are the kinds of things that happen? What happens when you try and change?
The ease of change is inversely proportional to the amount of pain that the team has.
Yeah.
So what I found is that the teams that they're so under stress, they have so many problems. If you can kind of map the expected benefits to the issues that they're experiencing,
yeah,
the change goes much, much more easily.
So any change requires effort. And there has to be a trade-off, and people have to really believe it's going to be better for them. And really convincing them is the hard part. Any other things you want to share about issues you ran into when you tried to introduce change? Okay, well, there's lots of obstacles. And I think obstacles to do with people are too busy. People don't trust you. People don't want to learn new things. They want to be good at the things that they already know. And so whenever you come and you say, hey, there's this cool thing, then people are like, oh, seems like hard work to me. It would be nice if we could find ways to make change easy. It's never very easy. So it requires investment of time, and not just the other people. You have to put more effort into making the change. So you have to try and think, how can I invest my time to understand this thing better so that I can actually prepare the way and get people interested in doing this new thing? So I'm going to illustrate some of the points that people encounter with some little stick men. So here's Bob. He's been to a conference and he's heard about this new thing. It's really cool. But the guys at work, they're just not that interested. It's like, first of all, like, how did he get to go to a conference when they didn't get to go to a conference? And then second of all, like, because he's been away, they've been having to do his tasks. Now he's back, he needs to help them. And, they're not that, it's not the best time to mention it. So, like, coming and going, hey, I know all this stuff, perhaps don't do it as soon as you immediately arrive, okay? Because people will be feeling like it's already unfair you went away to a conference. And then there's Bob, and he thinks, I can't believe it. Everybody at the conference liked this stuff, and what's wrong with them? Now, part of it is not what is wrong with them. It's wrong with how Bob is preparing the message about this. So, is it their problem or is it his problem? Now, what went wrong? Well, he was asking at a time when they were busy, and he wasn't explaining. He was really talking in terms of as if you already knew what this thing was. So the thing is that most of us, when we come back from a conference with an idea, we're not really ready for people to say, hey, yes, we want to do it now, because we really don't know what it is. We've heard a very small amount about it at a conference where a speaker made it sound easy. And if everyone said, yes, let's start it right away, we wouldn't really know what to do. We wouldn't really know, yes, well, first of all, we do this, and then we do this, and then we do this. Has anybody heard about something at this conference that they think, yes, I'd like to try that when I get back? What kinds of things? Loads of people. Yes? What? Volunteer to say something.
Oh, you're asking
Any of you?
No estimate.
What?
No estimate.
No estimates, yeah? Okay. Well, and so, do you know exactly what you need to ask people to do no estimates?
Approximate.
Yeah. Do you think you perhaps need to think it through a little bit more before? Yes. Yes. What else? Anything else people have heard about they want to try? Toyota Kata, yeah. Now, at least Toyota Kata was done through a workshop, so you had a little bit of experience of trying it out. So you perhaps feel a little bit like, I have a sense of how it works from doing it. And one of the crucial things that you can do is actually to practice and to do some kind of use of it yourself before asking everybody else to do a thing. So my big message when you want to try to introduce change, you have to do it very slowly. It's not going to be like an overnight, hey, we're suddenly transformed. It's actually quite a slow process. But if it is a slow process, then you have a chance to do it properly, and it has a more likelihood that people will keep doing this change. So don't expect to just mention things and people just start doing them. You do need to invest time and thinking how it's really going to work out for people. An important thing is to, whenever you're explaining anything to somebody, put yourself in their shoes, think about what situation they're in. So like, think about how things have been while you've been away, think about what they're doing right at this moment, and pick a moment when they will have time to listen to your idea. And then be careful about the words that you use. So when you, and sometimes this might happen when you're in an Agile conference, there is a lot of jargon, a lot of terminology. You're already using words, Toyota Kata and no estimates, that might puzzle people and people might not really immediately understand. It can be even worse when there are all these acronyms like TDD and BDD and ATDD, and you can, and DDDD, you can get people who don't really know what you're talking about. So try to simplify what you're explaining to people and take it down into natural language that people might understand. Not necessarily that dogs would understand, though. And also, think about what is interesting to them. So the what's in it for me kind of thing. What is the benefit that this is going to bring you? Why should you listen to me at all about this thing? Well, because this could make this part of your job easier. So try to think about what would make it interesting to them. Because if you start talking about stuff that they don't care about, then they're like, tune out and they're away as soon as possible. And who has met somebody who's like this guy up here, who's just like talking and talking and very unaware that people are not listening? They're like just, yeah, okay. And then the person goes on and on and on, and it's like, we stopped listening to you 5 minutes ago, kind of thing. So one of the things that you could do is you could try to make a sort of non-threatening opportunity for people to learn about the thing that you learned about. So when you go to a conference, it's partly an obligation really to say, hey, I went to this conference and I want to set aside some time to share with you the things that were at the conference, and I will make a time and I will prepare a presentation and I will give you some information so that you have some benefit from me going. So to try to bring the things that you learned here back to your teams in a way where you have put effort to put them together so that it's easily accessible for those people, and to give them a time where they might ask questions and discuss things in an open way without feeling like, and I want to do all of these things now. So like separating out the information, here is what this thing is, from the shall we do it or shan't we do it. So does that make sense? Okay. But you still will find, so who here has ever tried to do a talk at work about something which is optional? So like you say, hey, I'm going to do a lunchtime talk. Does everybody come? No. There are some people who want to go and eat their lunch. There's some people who want to go to the bank or phone their wife or various other things. And so there's a few people, the interested people, who will appear, and then there's a few people who sort of never come to that kind of thing. And so gradually you are building some awareness within your team. At least you're offering to teach people about it, and you're making materials available to them. People who didn't show up, they might read the slides if you share them with them. They might not, but it's still trying to make the information available to them. And then you can also try, if you feel frustrated that nobody is listening to you, and also if you are trying to find more information out yourself about something, sometimes you will find there is an interest group. It might be an online community, it might be a meetup. So for instance, if it was you learned all about JavaScript and some new testing framework, you could try and find the JavaScript user group and find out the answers to your questions there. And often those people, because you go and find some enthusiastic people, they then help to relight the fire. Because you might have this feeling of excitement as you have been at Agile Adria, and then when you go back, you still have a passion about it, and then eventually, with all the negative feelings, it dies away. So when you go and visit a user group, you can relight this fire again and feel like, oh yes, people really do this. I'm not mad. Because when you keep trying to give a message to people and they're like not interested, sometimes you just give up. And in fact, this is the pattern that I see the most with people, is there'll be somebody who's keen to try something, and then they just give up. They don't invest in the idea very much themselves. They just say, well, I mentioned it. A classic thing you will hear is people saying, oh, I said that months ago. But basically, all they did was they mentioned the new idea nobody was interested in, and they forgot to say anything else. You need to if you want an actual change to happen, you need to sustain the information. And so, if at first you don't succeed, you can try again. You can keep trying. There are some nice panda videos of pandas going down slides, and they do learn eventually how to do it without falling off. And you can too. Some common reasons why people resist change. And one of the things that you find is people resist new ideas for different reasons, and you have to address all of those reasons in a group. So you might have one person here, they're not sure, they don't feel they're not sure if they will be able to do it. So they need to learn to be able to do it. This guy is more worried about what the management think. Is it okay with the management if we do this? This guy is more concerned with delivery schedule. It's like, no, we've got urgent things now. We can't afford to slow down. Somebody was telling me about a picture that Hakan was sharing, which has some Lego people, and they're pushing a cart with square wheels. And it's very hard work to push the cart with the square wheels. But we don't have time to think about round wheels. But the round wheels would make it much easier. But people are worried that they might waste time on an idea that might not have any benefit. And then there are some people who just don't like hard work, and they don't like doing things differently, and they're just like, oh, we do things like this, and this is fine. The hardest people to persuade to change are people who like things how they are now, and they think it's perfectly fine. And if they think everything's perfectly fine, and you cannot persuade them that it could be different, then, or it could be better if it was different, then that's the really, they're the difficult people. The people who, it often seems like you get the critics, the people who don't like your idea, and they will argue with you. Very often, they are the people who will really try it. And what they're doing is they're testing you. They're testing out the idea by arguing and discussing it with you. It's the people who don't want to discuss it at all that are very difficult to persuade of any change. So what you have to do is to try to dig deeper and get to understand the different reasons why different people are not wanting to try the new thing. And it really can start with listening to people. You have to allow time to really understand what each person is feeling about their current situation before thinking about, like, how can this thing that I believe might help make a change. And sometimes through listening to people you discover that there is a much bigger problem, that the thing that you want to do won't help with at all, and you might be trying to introduce a change when another change might be better. So really start with listening to people, and listening to people, you are getting information. You're getting information about the situation you're trying to introduce your change into. You're getting a sense of how people are feeling about that. And it really shows that you respect the people that you're working with. And sometimes when you start talking about an idea, like I was talking about, this kind of building this fire of passion, of people wanting things to be different, just talking to people can encourage people to think there is changes possible. And so, you know, part of coaching, a huge part of coaching, is really just talking to people and understanding what they would like to change and what they might like to do. So just some very practical tips about listening. This is something I really struggle with myself, is not talking at the same time. So you really have to, if you're listening, you need to be quiet. You need to allow time for that person to speak, and you need to pay attention to what they're saying. And when they get to a point, so often people will talk and they go, ah, la, 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 and then they stop. And at that point you can say, go on, or yeah, and yes, and then they will talk more. So you need to be interested, and you need to explain that you have heard them. And one thing you can do when you've heard people is if you say, oh, I see, so you are saying this. And that this is a chance, when you repeat back to them something you've heard in a summary, they can either say, no, you've completely missed the point, I'm not saying that, or yes, that is what I'm saying. And people feel validated by having somebody listen to their concerns. And when people listen, you listen to people, it creates this reciprocity effect where they will start to listen to you. So if you want people to listen to your ideas, you better listen to other people's ideas first. And that's quite hard for a lot of people. So here's Bob, and he's trying to ask one of the guys who works there a little bit more. And what he finds out, actually, is some information that could be relevant to him, is that there was, a few months ago, a time when it was tried. This was before Bob had joined the team, and the management didn't want to do it. So this is one of the reasons why everybody's not interested in his idea, because they were told it's not a priority. And so people have just turned that into, we're not allowed to do that. So one of the things in this situation, Bob may need to go and persuade the management of the value of the idea too. So the things that you can do when nobody is listening yet is you can try doing the thing yourself. So who has heard of personal Kanban? A few people? Okay, so that's a thing that you can do. If you can't persuade all of your team to do Kanban, you can start doing Kanban yourself. One of the developers in our team just recently, he decided, because he's been in our team for a year, and we use this Trello system for cards for our work, and he decided he would start using it for his own work because he had a lot of side projects he was doing. You know, he wanted to write a blog and he wanted to do some other things. And he said, I'm going to set up a Trello board for myself. And he's found that actually it has got him to do things that he wouldn't have done otherwise. So sometimes just practicing a system yourself, you both find out what it's good for and you start to find out some of the problems with it too. So being an example is something that you can do. Sorry, I was on the wrong side. And you can practice, you can look for opportunities where the thing that you are doing might help. And you can start to try to think about what are the benefits of your idea and how would it practically work in your situation. So think about your idea like a product. What's the value? How feasible is it? And how usable will it be for people? If you say, I want to try, and you just give a label, people don't understand. But if you can say, right, we're going to use this to do that, and we're going to do it at this time, then it seems much clearer for people to understand how to do. The biggest challenge with any change is usually not people not wanting to try, it's people feeling there is no time. When an organization is under a lot of pressure, time pressure, it's very, very difficult to change things. And sometimes you might need to do what Fowler said, this thing, change your organization or change your organization. So sometimes you start to realize that the thing that you would like to do is not going to work in the organization where you're at because things are too stressful. Maybe you need to go somewhere else at a place where you can try it, where it is not so busy. It's quite a radical step, but sometimes it may be worth trying. The other thing you can do is you can try. This guy is a manager, and they're not normally kind of saying yes, but you can talk to people, and you can try to persuade management about improving the way that the team work. And if you can get like a period where they allow you to try an idea, that can make the team more likely to feel like it's okay. So it's worthwhile. There are times when you want to try something very innovative where it's not really ready for people to use it yet. There are, you can hear about open source frameworks and things which they haven't really settled down. They're not quite ready to use. And so sometimes you need to make sure that you have the right tools in place. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time and it is not the right time to use it because the idea has not matured enough. So you need to be aware of that. You also could try to appeal to the individuals about what opportunities there will be if we do this new idea for them. What could it enable them to do? Why would they personally want to try it? So it could be that they might be able to go and speak at a conference or user group themselves. It might be that they could use this new technique to take a leadership role in their organization. It could be something that they could put on their resume. So you have to think about why a person might want to try and get involved in a new idea. Who has read this book, Drive? It's a book about motivation, and what it says basically is that motivation like this, offering somebody a carrot, an incentive, doesn't work, and that what really motivates people is an opportunity to learn, a connection with a purpose, and autonomy, having the choice. So one thing that's very, very important when you're introducing change is to not go, I've decided how everything is going to work and it's going to be like this. You need to do some thinking about how it might work, but you want to open it out so that people can feel that they have some choice in how it will work. So, and helping people to feel that there is some opportunity for them to deliver something with better value or to have a better quality of life at work. These are kind of purposes why somebody may try. And most people will value the opportunity to try and learn something new, but not if it's too fast for them. So if you're trying to say, hey, you have to learn this new thing, and people are like, I'm not comfortable, that's too fast, it's too much for me to learn at one time. So again, going slowly, giving people the time to practice and learn something without it feeling like they have to be good at something straight away. So it is worthwhile spending some time describing how things could be if we were doing this new thing. What will it be like? What will our lives be like? Because that can, again, ignite this fire that people feel like, yes, I do want to work in an organization where we do these things. And it's much better and more likely to succeed if you can involve other people in it. So if people feel it's like you and only your idea, they can be suspicious of your motive. They kind of go, oh, you want to do this thing so that you get all the praise and everything. So it's very important really to try and share the idea with people and get them more involved in owning it. So really, if you can, if there are other people who are faintly interested in it, try to get them to be more involved and seen as the leaders of this, because again, feels like more of an opportunity for them. It's also true that with any change, it's quite hard to do it all on your own. So you really benefit from having more people thinking about it, more effort around it. So try to, instead of hoping that everyone will convert to your new idea immediately, just one person at a time and get them involved and really work as a group with them. So that it doesn't feel like it's just you. And really encourage experimentation. So these people who are helping you with the idea, they may have different reasons for wanting to do it. They may have different ideas about how it can work. And one of the things you have to do is to actually let go of your idea and let other people take it and shape it. And it may turn out to be very different than what you were hoping. So, things that you can do to build team awareness of the problem. So often you need to sell a problem before you sell a solution. So think about trying to focus retrospectives about a particular issue. Think about discussing in a team, maybe in a retrospective, what our agreements are, because sometimes when people have not really, maybe it's not clear what our policy is in this team towards something, then people may not, they may have misunderstandings about what we're trying to do. So think about trying to make agreements more clear. When you have a clear agreement, it's easier then to change it. If it's not clear what the agreement is, it's hard to even say perhaps it should be different. And also, if you have an issue that you are concerned about in your team, sometimes the team doesn't really believe it's an issue. A classic one could be people coming into the office late. I don't know, does anybody work in organisations where they have problems with people being late? Yeah, okay. Well, I work with these 3 different teams. One team has a problem with being late, and the other teams do not have a problem with being late. And the team that comes in late, they know that they're late. And they occasionally try to do things like make it visible on the board how late they have been. But they still, and even then, the team name is Marmalade, and the other teams changed the name on the board to Marmalade. And because it bothers them that this team don't arrive on time. So I'm not suggesting that you go and change other people's boards, but what it is worthwhile sometimes doing is trying to make something more visible. A classic thing could be, how long does it take the tests to run? And if the tests take a very long time, maybe that's something that we can focus on reducing. So try to use some kind, like you may not be lucky enough to have like screens on the board like this, but you can have a page or a report that you send out. You can start counting and trying to understand the situation. So I wanted to give you some examples of things that we've tried where I work, just to illustrate some changes that can be done. Now I need to go and look at my slides because I can't remember what we're going to talk about. Ah, yes. So we've been trying to recruit developers for about 3 months. In London at the moment, it's very, very difficult to get developers who are good developers. And so we were frustrated with our current way of doing things. So because all of the teams are too busy because they don't have enough people in the teams. We've been trying to get one person for each team. And so what we decided to do was to have a retrospective just about recruitment. And we decided to have this with the personnel department. They're called people and places. So this lady here and another lady who's out of shot here, they are people from our the people who do the advertising and processing of CVs and things like this. And then these other people are developers. And what they're trying to do is to try and discuss how could we do this better. And the way I've done this retrospective is that I've asked everyone to focus on a particular topic, which is how can we get new developers. And then we worked in small groups. People drew things like this, about what they thought the current process was, because what we were finding was we were having problems here, so applicants were not even getting to this stage. And as a result, we made a list of actions. And one of the things that we agreed to do was to try and take a shared responsibility within the team, because up until this point, we had had this idea that there was a hiring manager, but then the hiring manager would get too busy and then everything would be waiting for him to look at things. So we decided we would do a different style of things. So what we did was we introduced this guy, Ted, and he is a recruitment token. And we agreed with the personnel team that we would open the process to everybody in our product development department. So each person would take a turn at being Ted for the day, and then we made a board to indicate, because some people were saying, oh, I don't want to do a phone interview with somebody because I already did 3 last week. And then other people would say, I'm too junior to do this. I'm not qualified now to look at CVs yet. So what we did is we have a column which is who has been the TED, have people who's been doing the phone interviews, the pair programming interviews, the whiteboard interviews, and we have this symbol here. And normally, the TED lives there until we give it to the next person. And it just goes alphabetically. And it's actually worked. So now we have made 2 offers, and we had a new developer start on Monday, and we've got another new developer coming in 2 weeks' time. And the moment where I felt this team ownership has happened is when our most junior developer, let's see, he's out of picture there, but he just, when it was his turn, he just went, oh, right, okay, so if I'm going to do this, I need to do it properly. And he wrote up this wiki page about what you should do when you're TED, and he put the links into the questions, and he gathered everything, and he really organized it in a way that I would not have done, and it made it much easier for everybody else. And so that's when you feel like you have this team ownership. But it only worked because we used an open process to decide how to do it. So everybody had that choice. And they had the opportunity to learn how to do the interviewing, and they had the opportunity to learn how to do it. And this is a different example. So we're in a situation where we have 3 teams that use shared infrastructure. So they have developer workstations, but 3 teams are working on different products. So then they tend to make little changes that make their workstations different. So whenever we want to create a new workstation, it seemed like almost a day to figure out all of the different manual steps to do it. So we had a bunch of other issues to do with monitoring. We were doing monitoring in different ways across the teams, monitoring of the services. And so we decided to make a cross-team group that was interested in doing this stuff. So the way that we did it again is to use an open process, to have a workshop, to gather the topics. So here are all the topics that people felt that we could do, that we needed to do, that they were not going to do purely in their team, but they felt we needed to do across the whole department. So things like, how do we deploy and supervise our applications? And how do we monitor things? How do we log what emails get generated? These topics, we gathered them together through a workshop. We voted on which was the most important. And then we did this. So we drew a line of who wanted to be involved in sorting these things out. And these guys want to be involved. This is me. I didn't want to be involved. That's because I'm not technical enough to do any of these things. And these guys, they don't mind being involved. That's like their way of saying, actually, probably I don't want to be involved. So then we got this group of people going, and they made a backlog of all of the things they wanted to sort out. And then what we needed to do was to make sure we got some effort to be able to address some of these things. So what we did was this was the bit which I helped with. I went to talk to the management, I explained why these things were important, and the management said, yes, you can have 3 pair days. So that's actually 6 developer days in the month. And now we have arranged it. First of all, we tried doing it 1 day a week, and that didn't work. Now we have it in a block of 3 days, and we agree what the pairing between the teams is going to be to work on these things. And it took a while, but now we worked out what this process would be. It's been working now for a year, so it has been a successful way of working. But it wasn't something that was going to happen without some leadership to say, this is an important thing, let's get together and talk about it, let's come up with solutions, and then you need a bit of sustaining for it to work. Like, on the days when we should be doing this work, the teams were saying, at first they were like, no, we're having a crisis now, so we can't do it this time. Can we move the days till next week? And it's like, okay, well, if you want to move the days to next week, I'm just going to delete them from the calendar. They're just like, if you don't think this stuff is important enough to do, you can't keep deferring it, because then it's never going to happen. And now, a year later, we have actually done a lot to improve the infrastructure, and it really does feel like this team have made a lot of difference to the development teams working on the applications. One more thing, which again has been something that is a thing that I tried to do as a coach, but was a thing that I had to get persuade the teams was worth trying. When I joined, one of the teams was quite large. And who's been in a large team trying to do a stand-up meeting? Anybody? How is it? The stand-up meeting goes on for a while, okay? And so what we decided to do was to make it 2 smaller teams. And the teams were very worried about this because they had been working together a very long time. Not like a really long time, like a year or 2 years. So we had a retrospective, and we talked about how we would separate everything. And one of the developers even made this cake, and it's a Lord of the Rings cake this is a volcano filled with marmalade, and they even bought special Lego figures here to go on the top, and a little gold ring. And they're really like, this is Mordor, this is a terrible situation that we are having to part the ways. And then a couple of weeks later, they were quite happy, and they said, this is really great. Yeah, we can do loads more stuff, we don't have those long meetings anymore, and they really enjoyed it. But it was a way of allowing that team to express their worries and to talk through those worries before we went and did this change. Now what we do is we actually rotate people between the teams. And in one team, we even have the team lead role, the Scrum Master role, is being rotated between people every 3 months. So not like every day, but it's like somebody does it for 3 months, then somebody else does it for 3 months. But nobody's forced to do it. You do it by choice. Nobody's forced to move teams. You do it by choice. So again, this is working with having that autonomy and choice to make changes. So my time, even though we started a little bit late, I have had a reminder about 5 minutes ago that my time is up. So I would like to just ask now, have you got any questions? There is a practical exercise I can mention that you could do, and I found this to be a useful way of thinking about changes. You think about the change you want to make, your desired change from what is the state you want your team to be in the future, so your future state. You think about the driving forces. What are all the things that would make it a good idea to go that way? What are all the things that are stopping you? And then you look to see whether you can get rid of some of these things that are stopping you. These are the obstacles in your way. And how can you amplify the forces for the good change? And this is a practical tool that you can do. So make a plan before you leave the conference about how you will approach bringing things back from Agile Adria. What barriers are you likely to face? What actions can you take to invest in your idea? And how will you build interest and agreement with the teams that you work with? So, with that, I'm going to say thank you, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. So good morning. I'm going to talk about this topic because I think everybody experiences trying to persuade people who they work with to do something different. I would think that because you've come to a conference, you're interested to learn more, and you're hoping to go back to your organisation with new things to try out. And then you face the difficult battle of persuading anyone to do anything differently. So this is what the topic of my talk is. And it's not, a lot of it's not really specifically agile, it's just generally how do you persuade people to try new things. So this is the environment that I work in at the moment. I work with XP teams, it's a very open workspace, quite a young team, and they're quite happy to try new things. But even there, where they're very, very XP, if you ask them to try something that's different than the core XP practices, like, oh, maybe we can try Kanban, then they're really not so sure. Or maybe let's change the iteration length, then they're, again, not sure. Perhaps we don't have a retrospective this time, then they still question whether it's worth it. So it's not easy with any group, even people who like. Do you think you perhaps need to think it through a little bit more before? Yes. Yes. What else? Anything else people have heard about they want to try? Toyota Kata, yeah. Now, at least Toyota Kata was done through a workshop, so you had a little bit of experience of trying it out. So you perhaps feel a little bit like, I have a sense of how it works from doing it. And one of the crucial things that you can do is actually to practice and to do some kind of use of it yourself before asking everybody else to do a thing. So my big message when you want to try to introduce change, you have to do it very slowly. It's not going to be like an overnight, hey, we're suddenly transformed. It's actually quite a slow process. But if it is a slow process, then you have a chance to do it properly, and it has a more likelihood that people will keep doing this change. So don't expect to just mention things and people just start doing them. You do need to invest time and thinking how it's really going to work out for people. An important thing is to, whenever you're explaining anything to somebody, put yourself in their shoes, think about what situation they're in. So like, think about how things have been while you've been away, think about what they're doing right at this moment, and pick a moment when they will have time to listen to your idea. When you say, hey, there's this cool thing, then people are like, oh, seems like hard work to me. It would be nice if we could find ways to make change easy. It's never very easy. So it requires investment of time, and not just the other people. You have to put more effort into making the change. So you have to try and think, how can I invest my time to understand this thing better so that I can actually prepare the way and get people interested in doing this new thing. So I'm going to illustrate some of the points that people encounter with some little stick men. So here's Bob. He's been to a conference and he's heard about this new thing. It's really cool. But the guys at work, they're just not that interested. It's like, you know, first of all, like, how did he get to go to a conference when they didn't get to go to a conference? And then second of all, like, because he's been away, they've been having to do his tasks. Now he's back, he needs to help them. And, you know, they're not that, it's not the best time to mention it. So, like, coming and going, hey, I know all this stuff, perhaps don't do it as soon as you immediately arrive, okay? Because people will be feeling like it's already unfair you went away to a conference. And then there's Bob, and he thinks, oh my, I can't believe it. Everybody at the conference liked this stuff, you know, and what's wrong with them? Now, part of it is not what is wrong with them. It's wrong with how Bob is preparing the message about this. So, is it their problem or is it his problem? Now, what went wrong? Well, he was asking at a time when they were busy, and he wasn't explaining. He was really talking in terms of as if you already knew what this thing was. So the thing is that most of us, when we come back from a conference with an idea, we're not really ready for people to say, hey, yes, we want to do it now, because we really don't know what it is. We've heard a very small amount about it at a conference where a speaker made it sound easy. And if everyone said, yes, let's start it right away, we wouldn't really know what to do. We wouldn't really know, yes, well, first of all, we do this, and then we do this, and then we do this. Has anybody heard about something at this conference that they think, yes, I'd like to try that when I get back? What kinds of things? Loads of people. Yes? What? Volunteer to say something.
Oh,
Any of you?
No estimate.
What?
No estimate.
No estimates, yeah? Okay. Well, and so, do you know exactly what you need to ask people to do no estimates? Yeah, change and are very agile. So I wanted to ask a little bit about you. So has any of you tried changes at work? And how did it go? Was it easy? No. Is it a piece of cake? No, it's not a piece of cake. What are the kinds of things that happen? What happens when you try and change?
The ease of change is inversely proportional to the amount of pain that the team has.
Yeah.
So what I found is that the teams that are they're so under stress, they have so many problems. If you can kind of map the expected benefits to the issues that they're experiencing,
Yeah.
the change goes much, much more easily.
So any change requires effort, and there has to be a trade-off, and people have to really believe it's going to be better for them. And really convincing them is the hard part. Any other things you want to share about issues you ran into when you tried to introduce change? Okay, well, there's lots of obstacles. And I think obstacles to do with people are too busy. People don't trust you. People don't want to learn new things. They want to be good at the things that they already know. And so whenever you come